Earlier this week, the question about changing the factory defaults in HSM came up on the Autodesk CAM forum. In this video, I'd like to show how a user can change those defaults, but also broaden the discussion to a number of techniques that can be used by a user to capture the best practices of their shop into the software. To start the discussion, I'm going to machine this entire part using my current defaults. So I'll start with a facing operation. From the library, select a face mill and produce the operation. I can follow that by using a 3D adaptive toolpath with a 1/4 inch end mill to rough my entire part. I'll use a 3D horizontal toolpath to finish all the flat faces and a 3D contour toolpath to finish all the walls. Now, if we look at the horizontal toolpath, you'll see that it's machining that top face of the part that was already machined with our facing operation. So I'm going to edit the operation and move to the Heights tab, where we're going to change where this operation starts. Instead of starting the process of looking for any flat face at the top of stock, we want to start it at the top of the model. And we're going to drop below the top of the model by 1/1000th of an inch. What happens if I want this to be the default every time I produce the horizontal operation? Well, I'll simply right-click over the input field and say Make Default. For the drop-down, however, I can't right-click over that drop-down, so I need to show you another trick. We're going to say OK to produce this operation, and now I'm going to right-click the horizontal operation and select Compare and Edit. Inside the Compare and Edit screen, we can see all of the parameters that drive this particular operation. I'll use the search box to search for the top. For the model top dropdown, I can now right-click and make that my default. Of course, I could also change numerical fields to default values from the Compare and Edit dialog at the same time. The key here, though, is the Compare and Edit dialog is the only place you can define defaults for dropdowns. Let's go ahead and say OK. So I've demonstrated how we can change the defaults for numerical fields and dropdowns. Let's take it a step further and add some math to the defaults when we modify our adaptive clearing operation. Moving to the Passes tab and looking at the maximum roughing step down, you'll see the step down set to 393,000ths of an inch. To understand why, we're going to right-click and select Edit Expression. In the expression, we can see that the maximum step down is driven by the minimum value between the flute length and 10 millimeters, which converts to that 393 thou value. I'm going to change this to be a percentage of the tool diameter. So we'll go ahead and delete the 10 millimeters and type tool underscore diameter times 2.5. I can select OK. And our maximum step down is now changed to 625,000ths of an inch, or 2.5 times the 1/4 inch diameter cutter. Again, we can right-click and make that our default. I'm sure at this point you're asking, how did I know to type tool underscore diameter in my equation? And that's a great question. When you hover over any parameter in HSM, you're going to get a tooltip that explains what that parameter does. Now, if you hold Shift and hover over that same parameter, you're going to see an advanced tooltip that shows the expression driving the parameter as well as the parameter name. This parameter name can be leveraged in any equation throughout the software. One final change I want to make to my adaptive clearing. I'm going to turn on rest machining, looking at my previous operations. I'll select OK. And I now have a roughing operation that's machining my entire part using some defaults that follow my best practices. What happens if I wanted to use all of these strategies again on another part? there's a couple techniques we can use. The first is to select all 4 operations, right-click, and select Copy. If I move to a new part file, I'll simply right-click and select Paste. I now simply need to select them and regenerate. So that same set of strategies is used on a new part file to rough and finish the entire part. It was simple. Copy, paste, regenerate. There's yet another way you can capture your defaults. I'm going to select all 4 operations, right-click, and select Store as Template. I can name this template Prismatic Parts and select Save. So now I'll simply transition to my new part. From the cam tree, right-click and select Create From Template. Here you can see a list of my existing templates, and within each template, I can deploy a single operation or the entire set of operations. I simply need to regenerate those toolpaths, and I've applied them to my new part. I trust this video demonstrates a number of techniques that can be used to capture your shop's best practices inside of the Autodesk CAM solutions.